Welcome, everyone. My name is, as I said, Michele Lancione. I'm the co-director with Abdulmalik Simon, who is also online, of this Beyond Inhabitation Lab. The Beyond Inhabitation Lab is a space where we aim to encounter new friends and colleagues, to have conversations around matters of habitation, the troubles of habitation globally. And of course, here today we are based in the Polytechnic of Turin at the DIS department. And together with two dear colleagues, Pietro Battaglini and Tamara Taher, we have organized this event with Mahmoud Hawari. Our intention with the event is to have a space, a safe space, where we can have a conversation about the troubles of the Palestinian land, and to look back in history, thanks to the work of Mahmoud, to understand how history has been mobilized to the ends that are all very clear in front of us. So Mahmoud will surely say more around these points. I'm not going to say very much. The structure of the event is that Mahmoud is going to give his presentation. Then we are going to have a couple of positioning questions from Pietro and Tamara. Tamara, unfortunately, is not feeling very well today, so she's online, but she's with us, very, very much so. Okay, let me introduce you to our speaker and to my colleagues. So today, Mahmoud is going to give a talk entitled Palestine, Settler Colonialism, Archaeology, and the Appropriation of Cultural Heritage. Dr. Mahmoud Hawari is a professor of archaeology at Bethlehem University, Palestine. He served as a director of the Palestinian Museum, curator at the British Museum, and research associate at the University of Oxford. Mahmoud specializes in archaeology and cultural heritage of Palestine. He's widely published in his specialization, and I really encourage you to look into Mahmoud's work, because I personally learned a lot when I started doing that. The two colleagues that have co-organized the event with me are Pietro Battaglini, who is a PhD candidate here in this department, and Tamara Taher, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the Department of Culture, Political and Società of the University of Turin. So this is about it. And once again, it's really an honor to have you here, Mahmoud, and I leave the floor to you for your talk. Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I'm very delighted and honored to be invited to the Polytechnic of Turin, the University of Turin here. And thank you so much, Michele, Pietro, and Tamara, for organizing this session today. I'm really pleased to come and speak to Italian audience, student and faculty about basically the root causes of the situation in Palestine that goes back a couple of hundreds of years, about settler colonialism. So tonight I'm going to talk about the relationship between settler colonialism, archaeology, the appropriation of cultural heritage. Israel's genocidal war on Gaza Strip continues to cause massive death, devastation, and humanitarian catastrophe for the 2.3 million Palestinians on a scale unprecedented in modern history. The vast majority of the Gaza Strip built environment, including civilian infrastructure, residential buildings, hospitals, schools, universities, mosques, churches, and farmland, have been decimated. Over 200 archaeological sites and buildings of cultural and historical significance have been reduced to rubble. This is the most recent episode in Israel's series of settler colonialism and ethnic cleansing, combined with systematic destruction and erasure of Palestinian cultural heritage. In my talk tonight, I will address two main issues. One is how the Bible and archaeology were weaponized, first by evangelical Christian colonists in the 19th century, and later by Zionist settler colonialism in the 20th century to invent ancient Israel in order to provide justification for a supremacist Jewish state in Palestine. Second, how the indigenous Palestinians were denied their rights, history, and land, a process of erasure of their identity and the appropriation and destruction of their cultural heritage that began 200 years ago. So I'm going to go back 200 years ago when the start of settler colonialism, European settler colonialism in Palestine, and the beginning of the interest by Christian evangelical archaeologists in the exploration of Palestine. So in the early 19th century, Western colonial powers became strategically interested in the Middle East and the Levant, especially following the French invasion led by Napoleon Bonaparte. They were motivated by three main interests or factors: the domination of the region and the route to India and Southeast Asia, the creation of Jewish and Protestant communities in the Levant, and the exploration of antiquities of ancient civilizations. At the same time, evangelical Protestant Christians became interested in Palestine as the place for the historical roots of Christianity and Western civilization. They believed that God promised the land of Palestine to Jews who will rule it until Jesus returns to Jerusalem, or what they believe the second coming of the Messiah. They also believe that the state of Israel is the result of a biblical prophecy. During much of the 19th century, evangelical Christian settlers from Europe, North America arrived in Palestine and established colonies. For example, German settlers from the Society of the Templars established themselves in Haifa, Jaffa, and Jerusalem. They were engaged in two major activities, these evangelical Christians. First, missionary work to convert local Christians and Jews to their theological doctrine. And second, to carry out archaeological work in search of the physical proofs of the narratives of the Bible among ancient sites of the land they call the Holy Land. From the mid-19th century onwards, American, British, and German evangelical biblical scholars and archaeologists focused on the biblical past of the Holy Land for its significance for Christian and Jewish heritage and its importance to Western civilization. The search for ancient Israel became dominant discourse in biblical studies at universities in the US and Europe. Western biblical scholarship invented an entity which is called ancient Israel while silencing Palestinian history. For them, the indigenous Palestinians didn't exist. Edward Said pointed out the close relationship between culture and colonialism in the development of Orientalism and the narratives of the West, and stressed the need for the subaltern colonized people to reclaim their past. The evangelical archaeologists were effectively the driving force behind the emergence of a new brand of archaeology that became known as biblical archaeology, with the aim to search for material proofs for the ancient Israelite nation state in Palestine, utilizing the mythical biblical texts. Basically, these archaeologists used the biblical narratives as a historical source for their research and for their exploration, and considering them as a reliable historical source. We all know now, thanks to many scholars who actually did work on the issue of the biblical text, that these are mythical, epic stories that they were transferred over generations and hundreds of years, and so that they were written, in fact, hundreds of years, even maybe I would say even around 1,000 years after the events that took place according to these stories. So many scholars nowadays consider the biblical texts as mythical and epic, but not really a reliable historical source. So let's start with the some of the images. For some reason, it's not moving.
It's not your fault. It's my fault.
So
Wait a second.
yeah.
Yes, it should work now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
So among these evangelical organizations that started to do archaeological work in Palestine is the Palestine Exploration Fund, what we call as the PEF, was established in London in 1865, declared their aim was the exploration of the Holy Land by means of excavation that would throw much light upon the archaeology of the Jewish people. Now, we must remember that Jews as a religious group in Palestine were part of the indigenous population, only formed 2 to 3% of the country. So it's interesting, they already wanted to explore the history of the Jews in Palestine while they are very tiny minority of the population. So they have a certain agenda already from the beginning, the exploration of Jewish history and not the history of the Palestinian people who actually lived in Palestine. So along with the white European colonists, the first Zionist settlers began to arrive in Palestine in the 1880s and established their colonies as part of the Zionist project for a Jewish homeland. So these Zionist colonies were established in Palestine much later than the European colonies in Palestine. So before I move on, this is actually, this slide shows the Palestine Exploration Fund with various activities that they did. So first of all, the photo that you see of this team of the Palestine Exploration Fund, that they were dispatched to Palestine in the 1870s, and they started to do a survey, archaeological and historical survey of Palestine. And after 4 years, they produced 6 volumes of books called Survey of Western Palestine. And in fact, they recorded 900 sites, towns and villages, and they tried to go through these names and find references to biblical sites. So, and they, I must say, they were not expert in the Arabic language. They're not experts in philology. Basically, they took these names of towns and villages and found the closest resemblance to biblical names. So, for example, like a village near Ramallah is called Bitin, and they thought, this could be similar to Bit-El, which is a biblical name that is mentioned in the Bible. So their work, it was actually very unscientific and guesswork rather than relying on historical sources. So, for example, they produced a map of Palestine based on the Old Testament, the one that you see on the right, and the second one based on the New Testament. And these books are their reports over the years. I spoke about the German colonies in Palestine. Here we have 2 images of German colonies in Haifa and in Jaffa. So basically, these colonies are much earlier than the Zionist colonies in Palestine. So colonization of Palestine, or settler colonialism in Palestine, started at least 8 decades before the arrival of the first Zionists in Palestine and laid the foundation for for Zionist settler colonialism. So, so the founder of the Zionist movement, Theodor Herzl, probably you heard the name, claimed the Jewish state in Palestine would be a portion of the rampart of Europe against Asia, an outpost of civilization as opposed to barbarism. This is the founder of the Zionist movement, who already in his book, he published his book in German, the Judenstaat. It was published in 1901. And he basically said, you know, we are going to build a state, a homeland for the Jews that will be a wall, a rampart of civilization against barbarism in the Middle East. So he actually considered the people of the Middle East, including the Palestinians, as barbaric. Such white supremacist discourse was deployed to justify colonization of Palestinian land and the intended genocide of the indigenous Palestinians, in a similar way as the English propagated the idea of terra nullius to justify the colonization of Australia and the genocide of its Aboriginal people 100 years before. Yet Palestine at the time was a prosperous Ottoman province with an overwhelmingly dominant Palestinian Arab demography, culture, and economic life. Here in this image, this is just some pictures of early Zionist colonies that founded by what is called the Jewish Colonization Association. The first one is Rishon LeZion, and the second one is Petah Tikva. These were established in the 1880s with the help and support by the French capitalist at the time, Baron Rothschild. And he, in fact, sponsored many of the Zionist colonies, first Zionist colonies in Palestine. The Balfour Declaration, and here, before I continue, these are some maps showing the first map on the left here, showing the Zionist, first Zionist colonies in Palestine, and the one in the middle as well in the color red, showing the concentration of early Zionist colonies, mostly in the north of Palestine and along the Mediterranean coast. So the Balfour Declaration in 1917 and the British Mandate in 1922 guaranteed the founding of a Jewish homeland, and Palestine was given away to the incoming mostly European Jewish settlers against the will of the indigenous Arab population. As it happened, settler colonialism was a process instituted over decades aimed at replacing a native population, including the physical elimination rather than exploiting it, as the cases of settler colonialism in North America, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. Three activities were specifically most important to the Zionist movement in this process of colonizing Palestine: tree planting, map making, and archaeology. The Zionists turned into archaeology to reinforce the idea of the Jews returning to the land of Israel. In 1920, the Zionist movement pioneered or established the Jewish Palestine Exploration Society and started excavating ancient Hebrew antiquities in Palestine. For Zionism, these uncovered antiquities were like a land deed, testifying materially to the idea of Palestine as the rightful homeland of the Jewish people. The obsession among Zionists with archaeology continues until today. If you happen to be in Israel, news about archaeological discoveries are put on the headlines of newspapers and now also in social media. So archaeology is an important national not only pastime, but also interest. People are interested to hear about new discoveries connecting the Jewish people to the land of Israel. That's what they call it. And so biblical archaeology, which began as largely evangelical trend about 200 years ago, dominated archaeological research of ancient Palestine throughout the first half of the 20th century. It provided physical evidence for the biblical narratives. The replacement of the indigenous Canaanites of the late Bronze Age by the so-called Israelites of the Iron Age became the dominant discourse in biblical studies and has led to the invention of a national religious entity called Ancient Israel, dating back 3,000 years ago. In other words, the pagan Canaanites, who were Semitic people and who were the indigenous people of Palestine, who worshipped multiple gods, were replaced by the Israelites, who believed in monotheist Judaism, which is considered to be the basis for Western civilization. This representation, which coincided with the rise of Zionist settler colonialism, connected the invented ancient Israel with the modern state of Israel, while ignoring and denying the rights of the indigenous Palestinian population to their own history and land. So this is actually here a series of maps that I wanted to show you. First, the two maps are showing the Zionist colonies in Palestine until 1948. And you have here the map on the right that's showing a map of Palestine with all the destroyed Palestinian villages in 1948 and 1949. Around over 500 villages and towns were depopulated, were ethnically cleansed in 1948. And these people, these Palestinians, became refugees, whether in the West Bank or Gaza, or in the neighboring Arab countries like Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. So for example, today, 80% of the population of Gaza, they are basically refugees that came from villages or they were displaced from villages that around the area between Gaza and Tel Aviv or Jaffa today. So what we see here is this map, which shows this settler colonialism in action in Palestine, where there is a gradual dispossession of the Palestinians from their land, where you have the map here on the left showing Palestine in 1946, where the majority of the land, which is about 93%, was in the possession of Palestinians, while only a small amount of maybe 3 to 4% of the land was already owned by Zionists. And by 47, the partition plan by United Nations gave 56% of the territory to the Zionists, while the Palestinians were two-thirds of the population were giving only 54%. And the result in the year 2000, or particularly after the Oslo Accords, where Palestinians were given only the West Bank, Gaza, and Jerusalem to build their own state. But even then, what we have is a situation like this today, where you have the West Bank, which is after the Oslo Accords, was divided into 3 areas, Area A and B and C, and only Area C that now is under Palestinian control, while the other areas are now under the control of the Israeli army. And the map here you see on the right as actually it's an axis map showing the roadblocks that surrounding the Palestinian territories. So now there is no continuity between these different Palestinian areas, and there are checkpoints between one area and another, which is in fact makes it difficult for Palestinians to communicate, and you have total control by Israel of the Palestinian territories. So after 1967, and on the occupation, of course, the West Bank and Gaza and East Jerusalem, Israel embarked on a continuous and rigorous colonization projects that included the construction of Jewish colonies. Simultaneously, they initiated extensive archaeological excavation at hundreds of sites in violation to international law. You know, according to international law, particularly the Hague Convention of 1954, Israel is prevented as an occupying power to carry out archaeological excavations in these occupied territories. But instead, despite of that, Israel did that without adhering to international law. So many archaeological sites, their names were changed. They had Arabic names, Palestinian names, and they were completely changed to Hebrew names so that they are seen to have biblical Jewish precedent. So archaeological excavations were meant to provide material evidence of ancient Jewish presence. So basically, to justify Israel's colonization policy in the occupied Palestinian territories, and ultimately give further legitimacy to Israel's existence as a state. So the recovered finds are usually transferred to Israeli museums and universities. Tens of thousands of archaeological objects are also looted and illegally trafficked across the border either by Israeli institutions, universities, and the Antiquities Authority, or by individual soldiers who actually transfer these antiquities to Israel, and also some of them abroad. And the most famous looter or thief of antiquities in Israel's history is the former Israeli Minister of Defense, Moshe Dayan, who became interested in archaeology. So he used his power as Minister of Defense. He used the Israeli army to actually go around and loot and excavate illegally archaeological sites. And over the years, he gathered thousands and thousands of very valuable objects. And after his death, his wife sold that collection to the Israel Museum. So as if it was a legal collection. This has never been done in any museum around the world, because museums are very careful about the provenance of archaeological antiquities, and particularly antiquities that are stolen from their context. So, and they are now exhibited in Israeli museums, particularly the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. And also because the Israeli law of antiquities allowed trade in antiquities, so it makes this phenomena of looting of archaeological sites a phenomena that is causing the destructions of archaeological sites, particularly in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. And another policy that Israel uses and used over the years is the policy of cultural appropriation of archaeological sites and holy religious sites in the West Bank and Jerusalem. So the cultural appropriation is a form of a structural violence. It can include also the appropriation of various forms of cultural heritage, not just appropriating cultural heritage and antiquities, but also it could mean also appropriating dress, food, music, icons, rituals, language, religion, holy places, and of course, historical sites. And of course, you know, the whole issue about various aspects of Palestinian cultural heritage, like food. You know, there is a war of what is the origins of falafel, what is the origins of hummus, and Israeli chefs claim that these are, in fact, these are Israeli foods, and rather than, and the same goes for dress, the embroidery. It goes for language, and now the Hebrew language is full of Palestinian Arabic that were incorporated and appropriated in the Israeli everyday language. So in the process of Zionist colonization of Palestine, Israel has been actively utilizing archaeology to deny Palestinians of their history and appropriate their cultural heritage. In this context, biblical archaeology played a significant role to establish the link between the modern state of Israel and ancient Israel, with complete disregard to Palestine's diverse, pluralistic past. The appropriation of archaeological sites should be understood in the context of Israel's aim to reinforce Israel's historical claim to the region and promote its unique Jewish characters. So from here, I'm going to show you some images to illustrate what I have talked about in my introduction. And so these are examples of the appropriation of archaeological sites that Israel have done over the years. And I want to start with Silwan, which is a neighborhood outside the city walls of Jerusalem. You could, these are images of, in fact, let me see also if I have, yeah, that's, I have a number of images here to show you. So Silwan, if I go back to this illustration that you see on the wall on the left, and that is the aerial photograph of Jerusalem. So there is a plan to create parks around, green parks around the city walls of Jerusalem, including the neighborhood or the town of Silwan to the south of the old city. So so I'll go back to this image here. So first of all, on the left, the image of Silwan, the village with its Palestinian population. Opposite, the excavation of a site which is identified by Israeli archaeologists as the site of King David, or site of David, city of David. And so the plan in the middle with the green color, this is the area that is designated to establish a biblical theme park, where the whole area will be destroyed. Basically, this area is full of Palestinian houses, almost 100 houses. So the plan is by Israel and by the municipality is to remove and destroy all these houses and build a park. And so you have the image on the right. It's a simulation of this biblical park. In fact, here, utilizing urban planning and development in order to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians from their own homes and destroying their homes and make them actually refugees. And these people, they don't know where to go. And so Israel is using municipal laws, using discriminatory laws. They're using different ways in order to push people out of their homes and destroy them gradually and build a theme park. Now, this site, this area, is actually managed by a Jewish right-wing extremist organization, settler organization. and getting funding from America, from wealthy pro-Israeli financiers, whether they are evangelical Christians or by Zionists. And the idea is part of, in fact, changing the demography of Jerusalem and changing also the urban planning of the city of Jerusalem, and to change the character of the city to become the Jewish city, or the capital of the Jewish people. So I'll go to the next image, and here I want to talk about the Jewish quarter in the old city. So you have the city within the city walls. Sorry, the quarter, the Jewish quarter, in color, in the blue color, at the south end of the old city, where after 1967, the Jewish quarter was actually confiscated and declared state land, and all the Palestinian residents and the population of this quarter have been removed gradually out of their homes. Their houses either were taken over by settlers, or they were destroyed, and they have, in fact, have carried out many excavations to reveal archaeology to be used as part of the justification of as if it's going back to Jewish heritage and Jewish history. Now, this area here in brown in the map, this is there is a quarter which is called the Mughrabi quarter, which is Mughrabi means Moroccan. So there were Moroccans who actually settled in Jerusalem in the 12th century, almost 800 years ago, who came from Morocco gradually and established a quarter. This quarter have been, I mean, you could see it also on the cadastral map on the right in the brown color. This has been completely erased and bulldozed. Those two images that you can see here on the left, the quarter before it was demolished, you could see the bulldozer in action. And that was only a few days after the war of June 1967. The Israeli army just brought bulldozers and completely, first of all, they have removed all the population out of this neighborhood and removed all their houses, including historical buildings that date back almost 800 years ago, in order to create a plaza, as you see in the photo on this side here on your right. So this is the image that you see of the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall, as it is called in Hebrew, that in front of this wall that is considered by Jews as part of the Second Temple, a Jewish temple. That is, it is basically, the Muslims think it is the wall of the Haram al-Sharif, which is the Aqsa mosque compound. And of course, there is a controversy about this, but historically, it is part of the Aqsa mosque compound, but it is considered to be a holy site for Judaism. And so this is the Jewish quarter. So after the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from the Jewish quarter, because technically the Jewish quarter was not, the majority of the people who lived in the Jewish quarter were not Jewish. They were actually Muslim or even Christian. And so Israel removed all the non-Jewish population out of this quarter and completely rebuilt it. Well, first of all, excavated archaeological remains, as you could see the picture here on the left, where they actually exposed part of the Roman Cardo, which extended all the way from the north gate of the city until the south. And you can see there is an attempt to actually use archaeology, urban planning, gentrification, and ethnic cleansing, all in one place, all in almost, I would say, maybe 400 square meters, in order to create a complete new, I would say, settler colonial reality with all these elements all packed in. And the other example I'm going to show here is the citadel of Jerusalem. Again, it is an example of a fortification in the middle of the old city that has been considered by many scholars and archaeologists and historians as an example of Islamic architectural, Islamic or military Islamic architecture. And it's been because of the name that one tower historically was named by Christian pilgrims to the site as related to King David. So Israel preferred to call this site, or they renamed the citadel of Jerusalem, which is in Arabic al-Qal'a, as like any other examples in Middle Eastern cities. If you go to the Middle East, you go to visit Cairo, Damascus, or Aleppo, there is a Qal'a, a citadel in the city that is normally it is a center of government in the Islamic city. So they have first of all changed the name of this citadel into the Tower of David, and they established a museum there to tell the story of Jerusalem from a Zionist perspective, a Zionist narrative, and they use the citadel to promote tourism to Israel. And you can see these images with Israeli flags used to promote tourism to Israel. Another example that I'm going to talk about is Al-Khalil, the city of Hebron, where the site of the Ibrahimi Mosque, which is also the site of the tombs of the patriarchs. Now, it is located, Hebron is located to the south of the West Bank, is under Israeli occupation. You see the image in the middle of this photo. You see the Ibrahimi Mosque, which is have been enlisted on the World Heritage List of UNESCO, and it is considered to be part of the Palestinian cultural heritage. But Israel declared it as a Jewish heritage site in 2010, and not only that, it actually controlled the monument, the shrine, and the Israeli army, in fact, have divided the use of the monument between Jewish and Muslim worshippers. So while Palestinians were used to be allowed to go in and use it around the clock, because, you know, as you know, Muslim prayers are starting from early dawn until night. So they had to have access to the monument. But nowadays, Muslim worshippers of Hebron are not allowed to enter freely whenever they want. So they divide it in space and also in time for both Jewish and Palestinian worshippers. But the appearance of the building, I mean, this building actually, it started as a pagan temple, and then it was a Roman temple, and then it moved to become a mosque, or a church, and then a mosque. So at one point, there was a church there, and Christian pilgrims used to come and visit the site. That's before Islam, during the Byzantine times. In the Islamic time, it was actually converted into a mosque, and while Christian pilgrims continued to come and visit the patriarchs' tombs. And by the way, probably some of you will ask the question: how come there are Jewish patriarchs inside a mosque? I mean, because Muslims actually considered Jewish and Christian biblical figures important in Islam, and they revered them and made them holy as well. So, for example, Abraham, Jesus, Isa, Moses before are considered to be prophets in Islam, and for that reason, Muslim rulers have built shrines all over the Middle East for all these Jewish and Christian biblical Jewish and Christian figures. So, and the building itself inside, it looks almost like any other mosque that you could see in the Middle East. And here I move to another shrine that was appropriated by Israel, and that is Qubbat Rahil, Rachel's tomb, which is located on the way between Jerusalem and Bethlehem. It was the monument itself, or the shrine itself, was built by the governor of Jerusalem in the 17th century, and you can see the appearance of the building. It's an Islamic building, but and Rachel was revered, was given an important status in Islam, and the site or the shrine was visited by Muslim women, but also Christian and Jewish women, because Rachel is a figure in the Jewish Bible, and so for hundreds of years, this site was visited by women from the three monotheist religions. But after the occupation of 1967, Israel decided to appropriate the site. As you see the picture there on the right, suddenly the Israeli authorities put a menorah at the entrance of the building and an inscription in Hebrew to say it's a Rachel's tomb. Now, this site was like that, looked like that until sometime the year 2000, when they actually transferred the shrine into a military fortress. And that is the image that you see down here on the right. So the site is no longer a pure religious shrine, but also as a military position where Israeli soldiers actually are positioned there. Snipers are positioned there, and they snipe at normally the young people from Bethlehem who come to demonstrate in front of, because this is actually the post, or the nearest post, Israeli post to the city of Bethlehem, almost near the University of Bethlehem, where I teach, where students on Friday, they come and have a weekly protest in front of this fortress, and often young students are shot, and some are killed by Israeli soldiers. I move on to, and here I'm just continue to just only show examples, different examples for you to understand how Israel is using archaeology and using archaeological and historical sites by appropriating them as part of Jewish heritage in order to give legitimacy for its colonization of the occupied Palestinian territories. This site is called Khirbet Sayloun, or what they consider the Israeli archaeologists as Tel Shiloh. It's a site that is mentioned in the Old Testament, in the Bible, that where Joshua has kept the two tablets of the Ten Commandments, and so and now there is an excavation there that has been going on for nearly 5 or 6 decades in order to find to try to find these tablets. And no surprise that the director of these excavations is an American evangelical archaeologist who is given millions of funding from evangelical Christians from the United States in order to find these remains. And evangelical Christians, particularly from the United States, they support other excavations, and they support colonization process in the West Bank. And no wonder that Trump today, who actually represent this, I would say, community of millions of American Christians, support Israeli colonization in the West Bank, but also support the annexation of the West Bank and East Jerusalem to Israel. And of course, not to speak of Gaza, where Trump wants it to be a Riviera of the Eastern Mediterranean. And another example here, the Qumran Caves and Monastery of the Dead Sea Scrolls. This site is located on the about a couple of kilometers from the Dead Sea. This is actually in the occupied territories, in the Palestinian occupied territories, and you can see the map there with the 3 dots. This is actually an important site for the finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So these are important scrolls dating to the Roman period. In fact, there is controversy among scholars that some consider this community who lived in this site were the first Christian community. Others, they consider it as the Essene, called the Essene, and they are considered by other scholars that they are a Jewish sect. And these documents are actually written in Aramaic, in ancient Hebrew, and in Greek. So there is still debate going on about the nature of this sect who lived here in a sort of monastery. Now, what is almost certain, and no doubt, that this is actually a site within the Palestinian territories that belongs to Palestine. And therefore here, so here we have it's been enlisted by UNESCO on the tentative list of World Heritage sites. And you can see the map of Palestine, and it says next to it, the flag of Palestine, and next to it, a state of Palestine. And so it is part and parcel of Palestinian cultural heritage, and on UNESCO's World Heritage list. So, but that's what not Israel think. They have appropriated the site, and they call it, it's a park, Israel Nature and Parks Authority. It is, and by the way, Palestinians can't even access this site, can't go into this site, because it's actually to the south of Jericho. And Palestinians are not allowed to actually cross a checkpoint there just to the north of the Dead Sea and reach this point. So it is a tourist site open to international tourists, but also Israeli tourists, often open for Israeli school children and to be part of the Israeli propaganda about this Jewish sect according to their belief. And I move on. I have maybe 1 and 2 examples to show. And this is the town of Sebastia in Arabic. And Sebasti it's an ancient Hellenistic, Roman, and medieval Islamic town. It's in the center of, or the northern part of the West Bank. It's quite a very significant and important site. It's the way it is planned, it's like a Roman or Hellenistic Roman city with straight streets. You have the remains of the Cardo Maximus in the center of the or crossing the city from one end to the other, and various other Hellenistic Roman institutions like an like a theater. There is a temple of Augustus there. That is why Herod, who rebuilt the city in the 1st century BCE, called it Sebasti, after Roman Caesar Sebastos, which is Augustus, Caesar Augustus. And so again, and Sebastia is also inscribed on the World Heritage List by UNESCO. And there is an attempt by Israel in the last year, in fact, to appropriate the site, prevent the Palestinians from reaching into the site. And actually, you know, there is a Palestinian Department of Antiquities who want to take care of these sites, and they are prevented from taking care of these archaeological sites by the fact that Israel say that this is actually part of Area C, which is under Israeli control. So they control this site and they want to turn it into another archaeological park. And here I move to the last examples. This is the site of Deir el-Balah in the Gaza Strip. This site was excavated by Israeli archaeologists, and this Israeli archaeologist Trudy Dotan, who, from the Hebrew University in the 70s and 80s, and discovered a very prominent archaeological site next to the city or the town of Deir el-Balah, that most of it now is unfortunately been completely destroyed by, you know, throughout this genocidal war by Israel. And so most important find in this excavation are these coffins that are called, where are they? Described as anthropoid coffins. They are similar to the coffins that were found in ancient Egypt. And so this was actually a Canaanite city with Egyptian fortress belonging to the ancient Egyptian army that is part of the control of the land of Palestine in the 13th century BCE. You know, at the time, Palestine was a colony or was under the control of ancient Egypt and part of Syria as well. And Palestine was important to ancient Egypt, or the kingdom of Egypt, because of two major commodities, wine and olive oil. And so that is, and often the Egyptians had you know, sent out military incursions into Palestine to subjugate the city-states, Canaanite city-states in Palestine to Egyptian rule. And guess what? These coffins are actually exhibited in the Israel Museum. They are actually being, some of them were excavated by the Hebrew University. By the way, all these excavations were illegal according to international law. And most Israeli universities, by the way, are involved in illegal excavations, were both in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and in Gaza. So they are, from a point of view of the Palestinian boycott campaign, the BDS, these universities are complicit with colonization, complicit with violation of international law, and should be subjected to boycott. And it's about time that the international academic community will consider the idea of boycotting Israeli academics and Israeli academia, because they are not only complicit in terms of the appropriation of cultural heritage, but also in the arm industry. And this is another topic that should be discussed maybe in a different venue. But returning to the archaeology, now we are actually witnessing that most of Israeli museums are full of antiquities, are taken illegally, or excavated illegally from the Palestinian territories and moved into Israeli museums and universities. And here I will end with a number of images to show the destruction of the built environment in the Gaza Strip, including archaeological and historical building. Very quickly to go through these images. And since we are actually talking from the urban department or urban planning department at the Polytechnic in Turin, it is almost, I would say, appropriate to actually refer to the fact that now what we're witnessing in Gaza, not just the destructions of building here, building there, but a complete decimation and destruction of all buildings that stand, whether they are historical, archaeological, or residential homes. And the images speak for themselves. But since I'm actually here to talk about the destruction of cultural heritage, historic or archaeological buildings, so we have here the map that shows the various sites and buildings from the Gaza Strip. And so we are talking about 200 buildings that completely were partially and completely destroyed in Gaza. And I'm just going to show only a few important buildings. So, for example, this is actually the, don't know what happened here. I clicked for some reason. Oh, yeah. So this is actually, this is an important, one of the most important sites in Gaza, in the Gaza city. It's the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, which was transformed into the Great Omari Mosque. First of all, it was a Byzantine church, but there are some remains that could be attributed to a pagan temple that goes back to the Bronze and Iron Age, on which a temple or a church was built on, a Byzantine church in the 5th century. But later, there was a Frankish Crusader cathedral built on the site in the 12th century. And after the departure of the Franks from Palestine, Salah ad-Din and the Ayyubids have built a mosque there, in which it was rebuilt again in the 14th and 15th century that you see here on the left. This is actually a very significant building in Gaza, because not only a place of prayer, but also it has a library with rare manuscripts, and it is a place of learning. And now there is an attempt to actually, by Gazans, to actually dig the rubble to take out some of these manuscripts. Although many of these manuscripts have been digitized, but it's a loss of these manuscripts. These are other images from inside, and also the destruction of the minaret. And this is another important building. It's called the Pasha Palace and Museum. This is a building that dated to the Mamluk period in the 13th century. And so it's not the building itself, but it housed a museum that, as a result, you could see a total destruction of the museum. And another building, it's a Khan Yunis. It's in the town of Khan Yunis, but in fact, the name of the town is taken or was given or was taken from the caravanserai that was built by a prince or an emir. Yunis al-Nawruzi is a Mamluk prince from the 14th century. So again, this building is badly damaged by Israeli airstrikes. And this is a Byzantine church that was excavated in Jabalia, or near the refugee camp of Jabalia, by the Palestinian and French archaeologists. And they exposed or revealed very important mosaic floors are now lays in complete ruin. And this is the Gaza National Museum, is also completely destroyed by the Israeli army. And so it was rich with antiquities dating already from the Neolithic times until the Ottoman time. And thousands of objects were completely destroyed by the Israeli soldiers. And here, I think this is the last image I'm showing. These are antiquities stolen from a warehouse in Gaza. These images are actually from social media. The one image here that you see here, in fact, it's how Israeli soldiers came to find a warehouse full of antiquities, archaeological antiquities that were excavated by Palestinian and French archaeologists in Gaza. They were excavating this Hellenistic Roman port of Gaza. And all the antiquities were put in this warehouse. And the Israeli soldiers came in and found it and said, wow. And this is actually a mobile phone picture. And so the Hebrew writing says that that the manager or director of the Israeli Department of Antiquities was brought by the army to see these antiquities. And guess what happened afterwards? They decided to take samples from these objects and bring them to the Israeli Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and exhibit them in the Israeli parliament. I mean, what kind of, of mentality is that? So it's basically to say, you know, these are the war booty, or the war, we conquered Gaza and we took these antiquities to exhibit them in the Israeli Knesset. What would you say? You say, oh, well, Israel is violating international law while they are committing genocide, basically, in Gaza. So stealing a few antiquities is not as serious as what Israel, in fact, committing in Gaza. So, and finally, I have here, before I would like maybe to make, just by ending my presentation by saying that, conclude in one, in two sentences. So I will conclude with 2 points. First, Zionist settler colonialism and archaeology in Palestine is intertwined. Archaeology played a pivotal role in the formation of Israel's colonial imagination and produced facts on the ground to substantiate its historical claims and nationhood building. It was in Palestine, under British colonial rule, that the new Hebrew nation, with its settler colonial society and ideology, developed. And in this context, the indigenous Palestinians were prevented from achieving their independence because Britain promised Palestine to the Jews as their national homeland. So finally, at a time of unfolding Israeli genocide against the Palestinians, enabled by Western dehumanizing propaganda, arms, and funds, it is important to remember, or to remind ourselves, that Western colonial complicity in Palestine began 200 years ago. It was Western white settler colonial enterprise motivated by religious and imperial interests that was a prelude to Zionist settler colonial project. It provided justification for a settler colonial supremacist Jewish state through the invention of a mythical ancient Israel, enabled by evangelical biblical archaeology. In the face of this ongoing genocide and Nakba, we must remind ourselves that we are not fighting only for Palestinian life, freedom, and liberation, but against a ruthless erasure of our entire Palestinian history and cultural heritage. Thank you.